The morning sun cast sharp angles through the glass towers of downtown Manhattan, creating a geometry of ambition and power. Nathan Cross adjusted his Rolex Submariner, a gift he'd bought himself last Christmas with his bonus, and glanced at the woman beside him in the back of the hired town car. Amber Reed was 26, blonde, and looked absolutely perfect in the burgundy dress he'd suggested she wear for today's crucial meeting. She caught his eye and smiled nervously, her coral lipstick matching her nails. "Are you sure this is appropriate?" she whispered, though the driver couldn't hear them through the partition. "Bringing me to an investor meeting? What if someone asks questions?" Nathan laughed, the sound full of confidence and just a hint of condescension. "Amber, darling, I'm the senior vice president of marketing at Sterling Media. I can bring whoever I want to pitch meetings. Besides, you worked on the demographics report. You're technically part of the presentation team." Technically was doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence, but Amber seemed satisfied. She'd been his assistant for 8 months, his mistress for 6, and she believed every promise he made about their future together. "And your wife won't mind?" Amber asked, the question she always asked, needing constant reassurance. "Maya?" Nathan scoffed, checking his reflection in the car window. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly styled, his Tom Ford suit immaculate. Maya wouldn't know a pitch meeting from a tennis match. She spends her days doing yoga and reorganizing closets. This is so far outside her world, she wouldn't even understand it if I tried to explain. It was his standard line about his wife, polished through repetition. Maya Cross, née Stone, the woman he'd married 12 years ago when they were both 28. She'd been a junior software developer then, quiet and brilliant in a way that hadn't translated to social situations. After their wedding, she'd gradually stopped working, claiming she wanted to focus on personal projects. Nathan had been relieved. Her salary had been modest anyway, and her awkwardness at company functions had been embarrassing. Better to have her at home, out of sight, while he climbed the corporate ladder unencumbered by a wife who couldn't make small talk with investors. "She must be very understanding," Amber said, though her tone suggested she didn't quite believe anyone could be that oblivious. "She's simple," Nathan replied, the word carrying more weight than he realized. "Content with simple things. I provide extremely well for her, the penthouse in Tribeca, unlimited shopping, a housekeeper 3 times a week. She has everything she needs to be happy in her little domestic world." The car pulled up to the obsidian tower that housed Apex Investment Group. The building was new, all dark glass and sharp edges, designed to intimidate. Nathan felt a flutter of nerves he refused to acknowledge. This meeting was crucial. Sterling Media was struggling, hemorrhaging money in the streaming wars, and they needed fresh capital. The mysterious investor who'd requested this meeting had already acquired small stakes in several media companies, and rumor suggested they were looking to make a major move. All Nathan knew was that the investor used the initial M. Cross in all correspondence, and preferred to remain anonymous until face-to-face meetings. Probably some Silicon Valley tech bro, Nathan assumed, someone who'd gotten lucky with an app and now wanted to play in the grown-up world of media. "Remember," Nathan said to Amber as they walked through the soaring lobby, their footsteps echoing on marble, "let me do the talking unless you're directly asked a question. Smile, look engaged, but don't try to contribute beyond your area of expertise. This is a big boys' table, and we need to show we're serious." "I understand," Amber said, though something flickered in her expression. Annoyance, maybe, or the first seed of doubt. They took the express elevator to the 45th floor, rising in silence except for the soft jazz piped through hidden speakers. When the doors opened, they were greeted by a reception area that looked more like a modern art gallery. Everything was white, silver, and ruthlessly expensive. A young man in a perfectly tailored suit approached. "Mr. Cross? Ms. Reed? Please follow me. The others are already in the conference room." The others meant Nathan's CEO, James Sterling, his CFO, and the head of content development. They were already seated when Nathan and Amber entered, and Nathan felt a moment of panic. Had he missed something? Gotten the time wrong? Nathan, good, you're here, James said, his smile tight. James was 55 and looked older, the stress of the company's struggles aging him visibly. Our investor will be joining us momentarily. Nathan took his seat at the long glass table, positioning Amber beside him. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan spread out below them like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. He felt powerful here, important, so far removed from his modest childhood in Queens that it might as well have been another country. Does anyone know anything about this Cross? The CFO asked, flipping through papers nervously. I've done research, but they're a ghost. No social media, no public photos, nothing. Probably values privacy, Nathan said authoritatively, though he knew nothing. A lot of serious investors stay out of the spotlight. It's actually a good sign, means they focus on business, not publicity. The door opened. Nathan turned, his pitch smile ready, his hand extended for a confident shake. And his entire world tilted on its axis. The woman who entered was tall, elegant, dressed in a charcoal silk suit that probably cost more than his car payment. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon, her makeup subtle but perfect. Diamond studs glinted in her ears, not the modest stones he'd bought Maya for their 5th anniversary, but serious diamonds, investment-grade stones. She moved with the confidence of someone who owned not just the room, but the building, possibly the entire city block. And she was his wife. Maya Cross looked directly at him, her expression unreadable, and smiled. Gentlemen, she said, her voice carrying authority Nathan had never heard before, and Ms. Reed. Thank you for meeting with me. I'm Maya Cross, founder and CEO of Crosstech Industries. I believe we have a lot to discuss about the future of Sterling Media. Nathan couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't process what he was seeing. James Sterling was standing, hand extended, genuine smile on his face. Ms. Cross, what an honor. We had no idea, Crosstech Industries. You're behind the quantum encryption breakthrough last year? Among other things, Maya said smoothly, shaking his hand. Her eyes hadn't left Nathan's face. I've been watching Sterling Media for quite some time. It has significant potential, with the right leadership and direction. Amber was staring between Nathan and Maya, her face pale. She might be young, but she wasn't stupid. She could do the math. You're Nathan's wife? The CFO asked, confusion evident. Legally, yes, Maya replied, taking her seat at the head of the table. Though I prefer to keep my personal and professional lives separate. Which is why I'd appreciate if we could focus on business today, gentlemen. I have several questions about Sterling Media's current strategy, and I'm particularly interested in the marketing department's recent initiatives. Her gaze fell on Nathan like a spotlight. Mr. Cross, perhaps you'd like to walk me through your vision for the company's future? I understand you've been instrumental in shaping the current direction. It wasn't a request. It was a challenge. And Nathan, for the first time in his arrogant life, had absolutely no idea what to say. Nathan's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Around the table, his colleagues were looking between him and Maya with expressions ranging from confusion to dawning horror. Only Amber sat frozen, her face the color of milk. Maya, Nathan finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. What is this? What are you doing here? Maya's smile was professional, cold, perfect. I'm conducting a business meeting, Nathan. Surely you're familiar with the concept? Or have you been coasting so long you've forgotten how they work? James Sterling cleared his throat awkwardly. I apologize, Ms. Cross, but I'm confused. You're Nathan's wife? He never mentioned that his spouse was in tech, let alone running Crosstech Industries. Didn't he? Maya's eyebrow arched delicately. How strange. I would have thought my husband might mention that I've built a $12 billion company over the past decade. But then again, Nathan has never been particularly interested in what I do with my time. 12 billion. The number detonated in Nathan's brain like a bomb. Impossible. Maya was a housewife. She reorganized closets. She did yoga. She was simple. Crosstech Industries, the head of content development, breathed, recognition dawning. You developed the quantum encryption protocol. Half of Silicon Valley runs on your architecture. You're that Maya Cross? Guilty as charged, Maya said pleasantly. I kept my maiden name for business purposes. Seemed simpler that way, especially given my husband's tendency to take credit for other people's work. The barb landed like a slap. Nathan felt sweat beginning to bead at his temples. Maya, I don't understand, he started. Let me clarify, she interrupted smoothly, pulling out a tablet. 10 years ago, I left my position as a junior developer to pursue my own ventures. I told you I was working on personal projects. You assumed I meant knitting or meal planning. You never once asked for details. She tapped the screen, and the wall behind her illuminated with a presentation. Crosstech's logo, followed by a timeline of acquisitions, patents, and revenue growth that made Sterling Media look like a lemonade stand. While you were climbing the corporate ladder here, Maya continued, I was building an empire. I started with a revolutionary encryption algorithm I'd been developing. Sold the patent for $50 million. Used that to fund Crosstech. We now hold patents on quantum computing, AI security protocols, and blockchain architecture that powers 60% of global financial transactions. This can't be real, Nathan said, but his voice lacked conviction. Everything Maya was saying had the ring of truth, confirmed by the shocked faces of his colleagues who actually understood the tech world. Maya's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s, stepped forward. If I may, Ms. Cross, Maya nodded, and the assistant addressed the table. Crosstech Industries currently owns 32% of Sterling Media's outstanding shares. We've been acquiring them quietly over the past 18 months through various shell corporations. The CFO went pale. 32%? That makes you our largest single shareholder. Correct, Maya said. Which is why I'm here. I'm considering whether to acquire a controlling interest and restructure the company entirely, or simply remove my capital and let Sterling Media collapse under its current mismanagement. James Sterling found his voice. Ms. Cross, Maya, if I'd known about your interest, we could have discussed this directly. Nathan, you must have known. Nathan knew nothing, Maya said flatly. Because Nathan never asked. In 12 years of marriage, he never once inquired about what I did during the day. He assumed I was spending his money, living off his success, being appropriately grateful for the lifestyle he provided. She turned to Nathan directly, and her eyes were arctic. What you never realized, darling husband, is that every penny you thought you earned? The penthouse? The car? The country club membership? All paid for by my companies. I've been funding your entire lifestyle while you condescended to me about my simple little hobbies. Nathan felt the room spinning. That's not possible. My salary barely covers your wardrobe and that ridiculous watch, Maya said dismissively. I've been subsidizing you for a decade, Nathan. You were my dependent, not the other way around. I just never bothered to correct your assumption because frankly, I was too busy building actual value to worry about your ego. Amber made a small, strangled sound. Maya's gaze shifted to her, and there was something almost pitying in it. Ms. Reed. Amber, is it? Let me give you some advice. Men like Nathan collect young assistants the way some people collect stamps. You're not special to him. You're convenient. And you're certainly not worth throwing away a career for, which is what you're about to do if you stay at Sterling Media. Maya, stop, Nathan said desperately. This is inappropriate. Bringing our personal life into a business meeting. Our personal life, Maya's laugh was sharp and humorless. We stopped having a personal life years ago, Nathan. You moved into the guest room claiming you needed better sleep for your demanding job. You stopped coming to any event where I might be present. You introduced me as, just my wife, as if I were furniture. She stood, and everyone at the table unconsciously straightened. She commanded the room effortlessly, a born leader, and Nathan realized with sick horror that he'd never actually seen her. He'd been married to a titan and thought she was a pet. Here's what's going to happen, Maya said, her voice crisp and businesslike. I'm giving Sterling Media's board 1 week to review my acquisition offer. It's generous, probably more than the company is worth given current performance. During that week, I'll be conducting due diligence on all senior management. Her eyes locked on Nathan. All of them. I'll be reviewing expense reports, client feedback, performance metrics. Anything questionable will be addressed immediately. Nathan's blood ran cold. The expense reports. The client dinners that were actually hotel rooms with Amber. The conferences that were really weekend getaways. The company credit card used for gifts that never made it home. Nathan, Maya said, and her voice was almost gentle, which was somehow worse than her anger. You have 1 week to decide how you want this to end. With dignity, or with destruction. I'll leave that choice to you. She gathered her tablet, nodded to the others. Gentlemen, my team will be in touch with formal proposals by end of business tomorrow. James, I'd like to schedule a private meeting to discuss the company's future. Without Mr. Cross present. She walked to the door, paused, looked back at Nathan one last time. By the way, the penthouse? I'm keeping it. You can move your things out by Friday. I'd suggest your guest room at Amber's place, but I checked, she still lives with her parents in Queens. The door closed behind her with a soft, final click. The room erupted in chaos. James Sterling was shouting questions. The CFO was frantically pulling up Crosstech's publicly traded information. Amber was crying, mascara running down her face. And Nathan sat paralyzed, watching his entire world crumble like a sandcastle at high tide. The emergency board meeting was called for that afternoon. Nathan wasn't invited. He sat in his office, door closed, staring at his computer screen without seeing it. Amber had fled immediately after the meeting, not even collecting her things. His phone buzzed constantly with texts from colleagues, questions he couldn't answer. Around 3 p.m., his door opened without a knock. Maya's assistant stood there with a security guard. Mr. Cross, I'm here to collect your laptop, phone, and access cards. You're being placed on administrative leave pending the due diligence review. You can't do this, Nathan said, but it was automatic. He knew exactly how this worked. He'd seen other executives placed on leave. It was never a good sign. Ms. Cross has provided detailed documentation to the board regarding expense irregularities. They've agreed this is appropriate protocol. The assistant's voice was neutral, but her eyes held something like satisfaction. Nathan handed over his devices with numb fingers. Where is she? I need to talk to Maya. Ms. Cross is unavailable. She's in meetings with the board. However, she did ask me to give you this. An envelope, heavy cream paper, his name in Maya's elegant handwriting. He opened it with shaking hands. Nathan. I've known about Amber for 6 months. Before her, there was Jessica from accounting. Before Jessica, Rachel from sales. I've known about all of them. I could have confronted you years ago. I could have divorced you quietly. But here's what you never understood, I didn't stay because I was trapped or afraid. I stayed because you were irrelevant to my real life. While you were playing corporate games and collecting mistresses, I was changing the world. I was creating technology that will outlive both of us. You were just the man I used to have dinner with occasionally, a habit I kept out of inertia. This week's due diligence will reveal what I already know. You've been taking credit for your team's work for years. The Brazilian market expansion? That was your deputy, Carlos. The millennial engagement strategy? Your analyst, Jennifer. You've been a figurehead, riding on other people's talent while treating them as dispensable. I'm not destroying you out of revenge, Nathan. I'm simply removing an obstacle to Sterling Media's potential. If the company is going to succeed, it needs real leadership. You'll receive divorce papers by the end of the week. The settlement will be fair but modest. You signed a post-nup 3 years ago when I bought the penthouse. You were drunk and thought you were signing a wine club membership form. It states that in the event of infidelity, all assets remain separate. You'll land on your feet. Men like you always do. But you'll do it without my money, my name, or my company. Maya. Nathan read it 3 times. The words didn't change. Over the next week, his life imploded with systematic precision. Carlos, his deputy, was promoted to his position. Jennifer was offered a director role. An anonymous tip to HR revealed Amber wasn't just his mistress but his fourth in a series of inappropriate relationships with subordinates. The expense reports were audited. The hotel rooms, the gifts, the dinners, all flagged. When questioned, Nathan couldn't produce the clients he claimed to have entertained. James Sterling called him personally. Nathan, I've known you for 15 years. I thought I knew you. But Maya's audit revealed things I can't ignore. You've been coasting on other people's work, using company funds for personal entertainment, and creating a hostile work environment for female employees who rejected your advances. Maya's poisoned you all against me, Nathan said desperately. Maya provided documentation. Video from security cameras. Emails. Expense receipts. This isn't vendetta, Nathan. This is evidence. On Friday, Nathan returned to the penthouse to find his belongings packed in boxes in the lobby. The doorman, who'd greeted him warmly for years, wouldn't meet his eyes. MS Cross's instructions, sir. Your access has been revoked. Nathan stood on the sidewalk with his boxes, his designer clothes, his expensive watch, and nowhere to go. He'd never saved money. What was the point when Maya paid for everything? His salary, which he'd thought was substantial, couldn't even cover first month's rent on a comparable apartment. He ended up in a corporate housing facility in New Jersey, the kind of place for executives in transition. It was fine. It was nothing. 6 weeks after the initial meeting, Sterling Media announced its acquisition by Crosstech Industries. Maya Cross would serve as board chair. James Sterling would remain as CEO, working directly under her guidance. The press release was professional, highlighting synergies between media and technology. It didn't mention Nathan Cross at all. Because Nathan Cross no longer existed at Sterling Media. He'd been quietly terminated, the reasons listed as performance issues and misuse of company resources, no lawsuit, no public scandal, just a quiet erasure. Maya transformed the company with terrifying efficiency. She brought in new management, implemented Crosstech's security protocols, and launched a streaming platform that leveraged her encryption technology. Within 3 months, Sterling Media's stock price had doubled. Nathan watched it all from the outside, scrolling through industry news on his phone in coffee shops because he couldn't afford Wi-Fi in his studio apartment. He'd found a job finally, director of marketing at a small advertising firm in Brooklyn. It paid a third of what he'd made before, and he actually had to do the work himself. His colleagues were younger, hungrier, unimpressed by his previous title. When he tried to take credit for their ideas, they pushed back immediately. There was no hierarchy to hide behind, no legacy of assumed competence. Amber had blocked his number. His friends from the country club had stopped returning calls once they realized he couldn't afford the membership fees. Even his own mother, when he'd called for sympathy, had said, "Maybe this is what you needed, Nathan." A reality check. He saw Maya once, at an industry conference 3 months after the acquisition. She was giving the keynote speech, radiant in a cobalt blue suit, talking about the intersection of media and technology. The room hung on her every word. Nathan stood in the back, feeling invisible. After her speech, admirers surrounded her. Venture capitalists, CEOs, journalists. And beside her, holding 2 glasses of champagne, was a man Nathan didn't recognize. "That's Ethan Park," someone whispered nearby. "Founder of Nexus AI. Brilliant guy. Apparently he and Maya Cross have been dating for a few months. They're perfect together, both genius-level tech founders who actually understand each other's work." Nathan watched Maya accept the champagne from Ethan, saw the way she smiled at him. Really smiled, with warmth and genuine happiness. He realized with a shock that he'd never seen her smile like that. Not at him, not in 12 years of marriage. After the crowd thinned, Nathan approached her. Ethan was momentarily pulled away by another conversation, giving Nathan his opening. "Maya." She turned, and her expression was polite, distant. The way you might greet a former colleague whose name you barely remembered. "Nathan. I heard you found a position. Congratulations. I need to talk to you. About us. About everything." Maya glanced at her watch, a piece he didn't recognize, probably worth more than his current car. "I have 5 minutes before my next meeting. What do you want to say?" "I'm sorry," the words burst out of him. "I'm so sorry, Maya. I didn't see you. I didn't appreciate you. I was an arrogant fool who took everything for granted." "Yes," she said simply. "You were. Is there any chance we could try again? Now that I understand what I lost?" Maya studied him for a long moment. "Nathan, you're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you lost access to my money and status. There's a difference. That's not fair. Isn't it? In 12 years, you never once asked about my work. Not once. When I tried to tell you about CrossTech, you literally told me you were too busy for my hobby talk. You made yourself small in my life because you needed to believe you were bigger." She softened slightly. "I don't hate you, Nathan. I just don't think about you much at all anymore. You taught me something valuable, that I didn't need anyone's permission to be extraordinary. For that, I'm almost grateful." Ethan returned, slipping his hand into Maya's with comfortable familiarity. "Ready, love?" Almost, Maya turned back to Nathan one last time. "I hope you build something real, Nathan. Something that's actually yours, earned through your own work. Maybe then you'll understand what I was trying to build all along." They walked away together, Maya's laugh floating back as Ethan said something that made her genuinely happy. Nathan stood alone in the conference hall, finally understanding the full magnitude of what he'd lost. Not the money or the status, but the chance to be partnered with someone extraordinary. He'd had a titan and treated her like a servant. He'd had brilliance and called it simplicity. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later. Maya kept everything, as per the post-nup. Nathan got his clothes, his watch, and a harsh lesson in humility. 1 year after the acquisition, Sterling Media had been transformed into a tech media hybrid that was reshaping the industry. Maya's vision of integrated, encrypted, user-controlled content delivery was being hailed as revolutionary. Nathan read about it in TechCrunch while eating a sandwich at his desk. His current company was fine, the work was honest, but he was learning something he'd never bothered to learn before: actual skills. No more coasting on other people's work, no more taking credit. Just him, his computer, and the requirement to produce results. Surprisingly, he didn't hate it. There was satisfaction in creating something himself, in having his ideas succeed or fail on their own merits. His ego, that massive thing that had driven him for so long, had been crushed down to something more manageable. He was dating again too, a woman named Sarah who worked in accounting. She was nice, normal, unimpressed by his former title. They split checks. They had actual conversations. It was comfortable in a way his relationship with Maya had never been, though he now understood that was because Maya had been stratospheres above him and he'd been too arrogant to notice. He saw Maya one last time, accidentally, at a restaurant in Soho. She was with Ethan, and another couple. He recognized them from business journals as tech founders. They were laughing, engaged in animated conversation about something technical he couldn't follow. Maya looked happy. Truly, genuinely happy. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, no makeup, her hair loose. She looked younger than she had during their marriage, unburdened by the weight of pretending to be less than she was. She saw him as she left, gave him a small nod. Not hostile, not friendly. Just acknowledgement that they'd once known each other, and now they didn't. Nathan nodded back, and that was it. No dramatic confrontation, no movie moment. Just two people whose lives had diverged, one soaring upward, one learning to walk again on solid ground. That night, Nathan sat in his modest apartment and wrote Maya an email he'd never send. An apology, a confession, an acknowledgement of all the ways he'd failed. He wrote about understanding too late that she'd been extraordinary all along, that his dismissiveness had been his own inadequacy reflected back. He wrote until his fingers were tired, and then he deleted it all. Maya didn't need his apologies. She'd moved so far beyond him that his regret was irrelevant. She'd built an empire, found real love, and created a legacy that would outlast them both. All Nathan could do was try to become someone who might have deserved her, even though it was far too late. 2 years later, Nathan was reading Business Insider when he saw the announcement. Maya Cross and Ethan Park were engaged. The photo showed them at a tech conference, Maya's hand displaying an elegant ring, both of them glowing with genuine happiness. The article detailed their philanthropic work, their joint ventures in ethical AI, their commitment to mentoring young women in tech. It mentioned, in a single sentence, that Maya had been previously married to a former Sterling Media executive. Nathan smiled, surprised to find he felt no bitterness. Just a distant sense of what might have been, and a deeper gratitude for what actually was. He'd learned humility. He'd learned to value people for who they were, not what they could do for him. He'd learned that brilliance often hides in quiet places, waiting for someone perceptive enough to notice. Maya had taught him all of that, not through forgiveness, but through her absolute refusal to be diminished by his failure to see her. He raised his coffee cup in a silent toast to the woman who'd been a billionaire all along, while he'd been too arrogant to notice. "Congratulations, Maya," he said to the empty room. "You deserved so much better than me. I hope you build something beautiful." And somewhere in Manhattan, in a penthouse overlooking the city, Maya Cross was doing exactly that.